Good morning, everybody. We're going to go ahead and get started with our special event presentation today. We're happy that you can join us. So we are going to bring you some information about potentially replacing lead chromates or the current supply situation with respect to pseudoshin. And with that, we will go ahead and get started. If you do have any questions, feel free to use the chat box, and I'll address those at the end. And also, I will be recording this webinar so that everybody in attendance will receive the recording as well as the PDF presentation. So if any questions come in after that, you can feel free to reach out to us. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and drop off the camera and go ahead and get started. So today we're going to be talking about the supply and replacement of lead chromates. I just wanted to be able to provide you with a sort of a visual of where the lead chromes and the molybdates fall in terms of color space with all other yellows and oranges. So the yellow 34, the lead chromate, comes in three colors or flavors, as I like to call. We've got the primrose, which is the greenest, most green shade, and then the lemon chrome and the middle chrome are the three typical color spaces of the pigment yellow 34. And you can start to see where they fall in with respect to other organic pigments. The primrose is to the green side, so that's where the yellow 138s or yellow 151s, 154s might fall. The lemon yellow is sort of in the middle, so that's where the yellow 180 would potentially fall there. And the middle chrome is going to be the most red shade. And that is where the pigment yellow 110s or 139s or even pigment yellow 191 could fall in that similar color space. And as for the molybdenate, the red 104 is sort of in the middle, a little bit more towards the yellow shade. So very similar to the orange 64 space in terms of color. So obviously these are part of the synthetic inorganic pigments. And so the chrome yellows and the molybdenate oranges are in that metal salt category as far as a classification perspective. So you can see where they fit in into the overall organization for organic pigments. So in this presentation, I've put together a little bit about the chrome chemistry, obviously why we should consider replacing lead chromes, what are some of the challenges for replacements, some of the alternatives that Pseudoshin has put together for replacement. And if replacement is not an option, we do have some options for pigment yellow 34 and pigment red 104 that might be an option for your needs. So as far as the lead chromate chemistries, as I mentioned, the three shades of the pigment yellow 34, these are all functions of how much lead chromate is in there versus the lead sulfate. So to get to the greener shade primrose, it's going to require more percentage of the lead chromate, or I'm sorry, the lead sulfate, and less of the lead chromate. And then as you reduce the amount of lead sulfate and increase the amount of lead chromate, the color moves to the red shade. The scarlet molybdenate is a combination of both the lead chrome, lead sulfate, and also lead molybdenate. So you can, and as well as some other ingredients in there depending on the shade. So you can get a sense of where the shade falls versus the amount of lead chromate or lead sulfate in the formulation. Obviously, why do we want to replace lead chrome? So I'm not telling you anything you don't already know as far as the health negative health issues with respect to these, just to keep it in our forefront. Um, the lead compounds are toxic to reproduction. The hexavalent chromium is considered carcinogenic. So lead chromates, they do have a very high opacities, high brightness. They're very easy to disperse. At one time, maybe not so much today, they're extremely economical in use. However, they do come with that toxic flag associated with them. So some of the advantages and disadvantages, I mentioned the advantages about opacity and brightness and economics. However, some of the disadvantages, especially with respect to plastics, is poor heat stability, and then also poor fastness for alkali and weathering, depending on the grade and the surface treatments that are being used. Um, just like all inorganic pigments, the lead chromes have very low tinting strength with respect to organic pigments. And of course, they are environmentally non-friendly. For the most part, the presentation that, as I mentioned in my invitation, the presentation that I put together is more geared toward plastics. However, there are still some coatings applications that may still be in use of these types of chemistries, but by and large, the majority of the coatings applications have already moved away from these chemistries, but there are still some that still have it. So what options do you have for replacing these types of chemistries? Classical azos are an option as well. High performance pigments, of course. Iron oxides, another inorganic pigment. Mixed metal oxides, of course, are also inorganic, and bismuth vanadate. However, for plastics, we found the best option is in the high performance pigments. Primarily, classical azo pigments are going to have issues with heat stability. They're not going to be as high as what's required. The iron oxides and mixed metal oxides are going to have issues with chroma and strength because they are also inorganic pigments, and they won't have as high of a chroma that's required to make those replacements. And then bismuth vanadate, also another inorganic, so it's going to have a strength issue, maybe not as much, but it's also a cost and availability issue in the current scenario in today's times. So when we move away from the chromes and towards organic pigments, I mentioned earlier on in previous times that the cost or the dollar per pound was more attractive with respect to chromes than it is to organic pigments. However, in today's world, that cost has come up some as well. So the delta is not as great. However, the value in use, because the strength is so much lower with respect to organics, there's a high value in use for using organics, and I'll demonstrate that in a few slides. Again, as I mentioned, the strength is the key with organic pigments. So in the area where we are focusing today, the organic pigments are part of the benzimidazolone and isoinolenone chemistries of the high performance organic pigments. And so what we've found in our work that we've done to help our customers replace lead chromates is that the yellow 180 chemistry, our Pseudoperm 2909, is great for replacing the lemon yellow color space of the yellow 34. The yellow 110, we've got two options, the 2925K and the 2927 is a great option to help replace the middle chrome. And then the orange 64 is a great position to use for the moly orange, the orange 2917. So I just wanted to give you a feel for the physical property differences with respect to the organics and the lead chromes. So I mentioned that the yellow 180, 110, and the orange 64 are the high performance pigments that we recommend for these replacements in here. So all of these chemistries have a fairly broad application area, have great light fastness and very good weather fastness as well. And most importantly, the heat resistance is at the high side, as well as good bleeding. When we compare that to the lead chromates, now these are our three products that we have, which are the standard grades. Again, we have a lemon, a middle chrome, and the moly orange in this type of these type of chemistries. However, the application window is much smaller. The light fastness tends to be lower, but more importantly, the heat resistance is lower than the organics. So in making that change, you'll also improve your physical properties in your formulation by going with the organics, as well as expand your application window. So I go back to some of the advantages and disadvantages and how the benefit of moving over to the organics, aside from the environmental and health benefits for that one, we see a wider application range with the organics. We see a higher heat stability with organics, as well as an improved in light fastness, and more importantly, the value in use. So I mentioned this a couple of slides ago. What we've seen is we can use upwards of 42% less in total pigment that's required for that final formulation versus versus the lead chromates. And I have some examples to share with you here. So the high performance pigments that we talked about earlier, the pigment yellow 180 is a little bit more to the red shade. If you look at it in comparison to some others, very heat stable, as you saw earlier. We do have two products. However, the 2909 is one that we definitely are promoting the most and is one of our workhorses. And here's how we made that that color match to it. So our pigment, our Pseudodor yellow 1222K at 5% loading, opposite the pigment yellow 180. In this particular case, we use the 2908 for a combination with TiO2. And then that required really only a total pigment loading of 0.2% versus a 0.5% to get the same mass tone color as well as strength. So it's 40% of what's required on the organic side versus the inorganic lead chrome side in that lemon yellow shade area. In the middle chrome, we recommend the pigment yellow 110. This is an excellent pigment as far as light fastness and heat stability. It is much more red, thus the middle chrome space. Again, with two products that we both carry in our warehouse here, so these are active, very active products for us. And you can see just from the chip size where it can be a very good match. In this particular case, again, the same amount of lead chromate is used, but for this color shade, the middle yellow shade space, we used the 2925K yellow 110, again, along with some TiO2, for a total pigment loading of 0.16% in the final formulation to match the color, the mass tone color, as well as the strength. Again, this taking this down to 34% of the pigment loading that's required for the same strength. Orange 64, as I mentioned, is the organic chemistry that is best suited for the Moly orange. It is a very clean yellow shade pigment, so it's a good base chemistry for making those matches happen. Also has very good heat stability. So in this case, our Sudador Orange 1475K at that same 0.5% loading. In this case, our Orange 2917, along with some TiO2 at a 0.21% pigment loading, match the mass tone color as well as the strength. So all in all, as I mentioned, we've done some work to be able to replace these types of chemistry. Of course, you know, in your final formulation, some tweaking probably will have to be done, but these are always good places to start in there. And on a total pound for pound basis of that final formulation, the replacements with organic pigments at the lower total pigment loading can be similar or even lower in cost to make that switch in here. So in one case, Sudarshan doesn't actively promote these types of chemistries in the US, but we do have commercial sales in other parts of the globe, especially in Asia and Mexico. So we're willing to help. So obviously with the recent news of a major producer going offline for quite a while, we wanted to make sure that we provided all of our customers with options for replacement, and if replacement is not an option, potentially some supply as well. Again, we have these three products. These are all standard grades, so they're not encapsulated, just the standard lead chromate and molybdenate chemistries in these three areas. We do not carry a primrose shade, just the lemon, the middle, and the Moly orange. So we've talked about this in the past, but we do have a very good laboratory applications lab in our site in India, and we'd be happy to help in your troubleshooting if you want to take this opportunity to make that switch over from the lead chromes to organic chemistry. Given that the current scenario might be a good jump off point to make that switch. So we would be happy to help you in your efforts here. We can be able to speed up your transition time, and we'd be happy to help. Just let us know how we can do that. So you've seen this chart before, and as I said, we don't promote them outside of India so much, and especially not in the in the US, but the lead chromes and molybdanates, they are part of our Sudador inorganic product line. So I added them here for this presentation just to show you that where they fit in, what brand they fit in. So we're all here. Like I said, this is a special event that we had here. So I wanted to make sure that you had the opportunity to see some options. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to any one of us here in the US. We'd be happy to help and get you samples, or I'd be very much willing to assist you in any kind of replacement activities that you want to go from here. So just wanted to say a big thank you to be able to join us on this sort of a short notice special event. So if there's any questions at this point, I'd like to address them now. And if you have any questions, just go ahead and put them in the chat box, and I'd be happy to address them. Okay, I don't see any questions here. So if you, like I said, you'll get the recording, you'll get the presentation. If there's any questions that you have along the way, feel free to reach out to us, and we will be glad to help out. With this, I'll let you get back to your day, and we really do appreciate you attending this separation. Oh, okay. So we do have one question here. Do we have any durability studies with the organics? We sure do in here. So maybe not in these direct formulations, but we do have the basic data for these types of chemistries. All right. Okay, another question about what delta E did you use to accept the color match between the two pigments? At, Typically, we try at this stage of the early areas, we try to keep the delta E at about 1 to 1.5 when we do these quick screen in there. Of course, you know, in each of your formulations, those the color match would have to be tweaked to get to match your polymers and your other dispersion formulations to be able to get that delta E to where you need it to be. But typically it's 1 to 1.5 for our general our general matches in the early stages. The other question was, do we only offer these 3 leads? Yes, this is where we are. As I mentioned, it's not something that we actively promote in here. So at this point in time, because we do not want to, you know, the industry is going away from them as a whole, you know, whether it's plastics or coatings. And so at this point, we don't plan to expand that type of product area. So it's just the lemon and middle chrome, and then the one product for the Molly orange. Each of the 3 grades are just the standard grades, not encapsulated. Okay. I think that's it. So again, thank you so much, and tune in tomorrow for our normally scheduled Pigments 101 webinar, which is all about yellow, but it won't include the lead chromates in here. We wanted to be able to split that out separately. So hope to see you again tomorrow, and I really appreciate you taking the time to join us. Take care, everybody, and have a great rest of your day.